It continues. Hello there! Welcome back to my writing advice channel. It's me, Max, also known as M. Karen, and it's the end of the year. Things are slowing down. The world's getting a little darker, a little colder, but that's fine. It's the holidays, you're out of school. Maybe. If you work retail, things are rough, be nice to retail workers. But regardless of that, it's a time of year where I step away from just purely writing advice videos and just focus on writing related stuffs. Nice conversational subjects for the end of the year. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite things, music. Music is one of the things that helps me write and helps me focus, get in the zone. And if you've been following this channel forever, I love video game soundtracks. Unobtrusive music that doesn't get in the way of the writing. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to talk about three albums that I used this year to get a lot of writing done. Most of them didn't come out in 2017, but that's not really the point because these are good whenever you pick them up. I'm going to have links to all of them. I'm going to have links to their Bandcamp or itch.io pages in the description down below. If you want to go check them out. 3 albums for you. I looked at my iTunes library and I checked, okay, what albums did I write to the most this year? There's a bunch. And there's also the albums that I write to all the time. But where were the ones that helped me the most in 2017? Let's dive right in. Stardew Valley soundtrack! I have to. Stardew Valley is a treasure. Stardew Valley healed my soul. Stardew Valley may not only be one of the greatest games of all time, but it's got a fantastic soundtrack. And I was surprised when I found out that it was all done by one guy. Not only one guy who made the soundtrack, but who happens to be the same guy who also made the rest of the game. Stardew Valley can seem like an obtuse game if you are not familiar with games like Harvest Moon or Animal Crossing. But if you do know of Harvest Moon, you will immediately recognize the inspirations behind most of the tracks, especially the seasonal tracks. Stardew Valley is a almost kind of farming simulator. You move to the country and you have a small farm and you interact with the people of the village and you form relationships. It's a very nice and relaxing game. I love that game. But the soundtrack manages to encapsulate that feeling, where things are a little slower, where you take things one day at a time, and where you can see the seasons change, from spring to summer to autumn to winter. Also, the soundtrack is like 79 different tracks. It's fantastic, and of course there's tracks for every different character, well, especially all the bachelors and bachelorettes you can particularly date in that game, songs for particular events, but the best are the seasonal tracks. Spring is happy and exciting. Summer is a little bit more upbeat. Things are happening. It's sunny out there. Autumn starts to get a little slow. I love the autumn tracks the best. But the winter tracks encapsulate the oppressive feeling of winter. The year's getting smaller. The days are getting smaller. It's cold and it's snowing out there. And the field that you've been taking care of the entire year is barren. Because you can't grow crops during winter. It's fantastic. The autumn tracks, there's 3 tracks for every season. And the autumn tracks are my favorite. But I would lie to you if I told you that I wrote the most to this year to the autumn tracks. That's not true. I wrote the most to the winter tracks. Primarily because they really fit the stories that I worked on. And if you're wondering, I wrote a bunch of Masks of Glass to the winter tracks. If you have some holiday money, pick it up. You will not be disappointed. I love that game. But even more so, I love the soundtrack. But even more so, being entirely honest, I love the soundtrack even more. It's just a fantastic... Stardew Valley is the best. When I say it healed my soul, I'm not kidding you. It made the end of 2016 a lot more bearable. Now, on a completely different tone entirely, The beginning of 2017 saw, or the end of 16 into 17, saw the release of a mod, almost full conversion mod, for a game called The Binding of Isaac, called Antibirth. And Antibirth came with its own soundtrack, and I picked up that soundtrack. Mostly because I have owned every Binding of Isaac soundtrack ever, because I love that game. The music in the base game is kind of oppressive, and a little bit obtrusive. It gets a little bit in the way. Antibirth, though, does a twist on most of the tracks, and it was a nice... Because 2017 also saw the last piece of DLC, downloadable content. The last big update for Binding of Isaac. And it was interesting, kind of, I mean, in a way, the feelings of like, yeah, this game is kind of over for now. Who knows if we'll see expansions ever again. And Antibirth did a bunch of twists in songs that I've heard thousands of times before. And my favorite, of course, would be Memento Mori. I was writing a story that required a boss fight, pretty much a boss fight. The problem is that a bunch of in video game tracks, boss fights have build up in the music. Boss fight tracks have build up. And it starts slow, and then it gets really crazy, and then it kind of slows down, and then the song loops around. And that's terrible for writing. You want it to stay at the same pace, at the same tempo, so you can just have that be kind of like the drumming behind the way you move. And then you have soundtracks like Dark Souls, where it's 110% loud the entire time, and that's cool. It's not what I wanted. And I found Memento Mori in the Antibirth soundtrack, and it's just right. It's just right for a big, scary boss fight that's not just blowing out my ears the entire time. And the thing with Antibirth is that it's also got this very, again, I know I've been saying the word oppressive literally like 10,000 times today already, but like, it feels dark and sad and eerie, and it really carries the feeling of this kind of mystical dungeon under your house. And the soundtrack captures that and gives it a completely new twist. All the tracks in the soundtrack are kind of like remakes or reprises of the original game soundtrack, and it gives it a completely new life, and for that I just love it. And again, Memento Mori may be the best boss/final encounter song I've written to in a long time. And the last one, it's got to go to Shinrai Broken Beyond Despair, the soundtrack. Shinrai is a murder mystery visual novel, and I played that game, and I had a lot of fun with it. But the soundtrack itself really captivated me, mostly because it's not a perfect soundtrack. There's a couple tracks there that I don't like, but for the whole package of it, it really captures that eeriness of just a murder mystery. And I don't know if I'm just imagining things, but there's a lot of I can feel inspiration in Phoenix Wright. I can feel it. But maybe I'm crazy. My favorite track is A Blanket of Sadness, and it's my favorite track because there's like 3 versions or 2 versions of it, and the confession version, it's the best sad saxophone, I'm gonna tell you my tragic backstory song. It's fantastic. Oh no! Oh, the sad saxophone comes in, and it's just like, oh, you know, when like sometimes you hear a song, or I mean, maybe it's just the thing I do, but when I hear something and I'm like, I'm gonna use that song. I don't know when, I don't know how, but there's gonna come a moment when I need a character to say their tragic backstory, and it's gonna be this song. It's just so good. And there's of course like a different version of that, but Confession is my favorite because it's got like the least instruments in it. It's just like sad saxophone for like half of it, and it's just so effective. The rest of the tracks, let me show you my logic. I think it's also very good. The main theme of the game is also fantastic. It's a very nice, dark murder mystery while still having what I can only describe as very nice, uplifting anime moments. It has some very nice, like, playful songs, which really work to counterbalance the darkness of the story. Because, like, the story itself, like, it's very light. It's very light because it's about a bunch of the Shinrai focuses on a bunch of teenagers having a Halloween party in the mountains, and things get bad. But things don't get bad for like the first third of the story. So of course the soundtrack has to have these nice uplifting songs to counterbalance when things get real dark. And it's effective. It's effective all the way through. But again, what's my favorite? What did I enjoy the most? A Blanket of Sadness. It's just that saxophone. It just gets me. I'm just like, yes, it's time for a real tragic story. And now, I said 3 soundtracks, but I'm gonna have a couple of honorary mentions. Or rather, Max explains why they're not on the list. Why isn't Persona 5 on this list, Max? Well, I love Persona 5. And my favorite tracks would be the Beneath the Mask tracks, whether it is instrumental and the Rain versions. They're all good. They're all fantastic. I wrote a bunch to them. The reason why it's not on this is because I wanted to show samples, and if I showed samples of Persona 5, the video would get flagged now. So, take my word for it, Persona 5 Beneath the Mask, the instrumental, the Rain, and the Rain instrumental versions are all fantastic. Also, Max, where is Nier Automata? Because you love the base Nier soundtrack, so where is the soundtrack for Nier Automata? I haven't played Automata. I own the soundtracks. I have been very sparingly listening to them. It's like 4 discs. And I've been waiting for a moment when I need Automata. Again, I told you. I grabbed it and I know someday, somewhere, I'm gonna need this music. And also the base Nier like the soundtrack for the game Nier is just so good by itself. It really is so good. Oh, look at me. I'm like, Max is like, I'm gonna talk about all the soundtracks I wrote to this year. The 3 top ones. Freaking Antibirth and Stardew Valley and Shinrai. And also, Nier is the best one every year. Man, Nier is so good. But anyhow, I could make a whole video about why I love the Nier soundtrack. And I could just tell you in like 2 words. It's calm, it's eerie, it's dark while still not being super oppressive, and also it has this. Some of the songs have lyrics in this made-up language that work absolutely perfectly because since it's a made-up language, the lyrics don't get in the way of the writing. Gods Without Loss is really good, and of course the Grandma's song. Oh my god! But anyhow. Listen, this video just became Max Talks about the Nier soundtrack. It's fine. Music is what helps my writing, is what helps me focus, get in the zone, and get more writing done. Music is a very important part of how I do what I do. And I hope this video gave you some nice ideas. If you got some holiday money, you cannot go wrong with these soundtracks. Maybe Antibirth is a little bit too niche for most people. Stardew Valley, though. Stardew Valley's is gosh darn precious though. But for now, I want to know, is music a meaningful part of your writing process? And if so, what did you wrote to this year? I usually sleep on movie soundtracks because I'm a slowpoke and I take forever to watch movies. Was there a good movie soundtrack? Did I miss anything exciting this year? Are there any other video game soundtracks you recommend? Please let me know in the comments down below. But as always, this video has gone on for way too long. Let's just roll into the outro. Hey, my name is Max. I'll do these videos twice a week, though it's gonna get a little bit slow for the end of the year. Maybe 1 video a week for the last week of December. I don't know. I have to check out the schedule. But for now, I have a Twitter account. You can follow me there for my silliness, writing jokes, and apparently posts that explode whenever I'm not looking. But hey, that's fine. Also, have a Patreon. You can support me there and get cool perks like watching my videos a week in advance. You can go to patreon.com/mkaren right now. Right this instant. Pledge $1. Just $1 and get to watch next week's videos. Just like that. And of course, as always, these videos are here. Thanks in part to the coolest patrons I've got who are on the screen right now. Thank you guys. You are making this possible. Thank you so much. And now, as we're rolling out, as the video's coming to a close, you know the dealio. Videos on the screen, button to subscribe, link to my Patreon, and over here a link to my other channel with my best friend Kitty, where we play games, we talk about anime, and we're relatively silly people. If you got some time these holidays, and you're just looking for funny stuff to watch our stuffs. We do Let's Plays, and we talk about writing sometimes, and also, I never mentioned this here, because I forgot, because I'm really silly. Kitty and I 100%ed Persona 5, not on video, because Atlas hates it when you talk about their video games. We did a almost 3-hour podcast called the Persona 5 Spoiler Cast, and we go over the entire game, especially the bad bits of writing in that game. We 100%ed everything, so we know what we're talking about. And if you're interested in that, if you were like, hey Max, you never talked about Persona 5 on the channel, it's because I did it on Dango Duo. There's almost a 3-hour podcast, so go check that out. But for now, thank you for tagging along, and I will see you on the next one. I'm not being attacked, it's just my hair clip, it's fine.